That was when she said, so I guess you're kind of magic. And I was like, oh my God, could you say that again while I'm recording it and I'll make it my ringtone?
Okay, so let's record the intro now.
So what did Milkless? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, hey, Milkless.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
Milkless. Call the audience, Milkless. What's up, Milkless? Matt and Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take.
All right, Matt, today we got another When Equals Now for you, coming live via satellite. Not really, but I love saying that. Matt, what do you got for us? You got something fresh that I don't know.
Yeah, so this just happened this past week, and I'm going to try to talk about it without getting in my feelings, because I know feelings make you uncomfortable.
Oh, this is a safe space.
No, I'm just fucking with you. So, and also for the parents out there, probably you're not usually listening to this with your kids because of how often we talk about cock and balls. But if you are, like, really don't listen to this one with your kids. So,
hold on, your mic is a little hot.
Little hot?
Yeah.
Let me just get off it a little more.
Okay, there we go. I'm not going to edit that out. We'll just see.
We'll keep it
live.
I'll fix it in post. So after last Christmas at some point, my oldest daughter, who is 6, really kind of like looked me right in the eyes and asked about Santa Claus. And
of course he's real.
Of course he's real.
And you know what? Why don't we check out that podcast Radio Lab? If the kids are in the car.
You know what's another good one is Grim, Grimmer, Grimmest for kids. That's a good podcast for kids. Yeah.
Well, obviously Santa Claus is real. So continue and
and switch over to Grim, Grimmer, Grimmest.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell her the truth. And so I did. And so we had that conversation, and it was sad for her and it was sad for me because Santa Claus is a fun, magical thing. It's something I believed in for a long time when I was a kid because I just really, really, really wanted there to be magic like that in the world. But what survived was in our backyard, there's this old gnarled tree. And at the bottom of the tree, a long time ago, we put a fairy house with 2 mailboxes. And since she was little, my daughter would write notes to the fairy and like find berries in her yard and leave stuff for the fairy. And then I would at night go out and leave like rocks or little trinkets or whatever and would write notes back. And she had this correspondence and we'd read fairy books. And this was really important to me because to me that like the world is fucking magical. This is something that like you articulate so well, just the very fact of our existence and like all the things about the way the universe works are kind of more incredible and magical than any magical story ever made. But there's this thing that happens as you get older and all these things become familiar where it just can start to feel like the magic gets stripped out of things. And so I have really wanted to build that muscle for my daughter. That like, no, the world is full of magic. But I'm also worried about like what feels like it borders on deception at times. And so since my daughter and I had this conversation about Santa Claus, she's multiple times been like, but fairies are definitely real, even though I never see them. Like there's magical and like we have that thing in our yard and like I've written back and forth with her. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty great. And it's just been a lovely thing in our life. And so like this past week, we were in a room at bedtime and she was talking about something and she kind of said this thing. She's like, but fairies are definitely real because there's that one that comes to our yard. And she had said it enough times that I was like, she just keeps kind of saying that.
Yeah. Picking that wound.
Picking at it. So she said something like that. She made that assertion. And then I just didn't say anything. I was just quiet. And then she looked up at me from like she was drawing and she looked up at me and she's like, otherwise she was bringing me all that stuff. And she got this look on her face, kind of like she was going to be funny. And she was like, unless it's just you, like Santa Claus. And I just didn't say anything. And this little girl's face just fell.
That's so tough.
It was so tough, man. And then she just asked, and she was like, I mean, she has all these things like hung up in a room that the fairy has brought her, like a key that like, she was like, oh, this is this magical key. And like, I just saw that little, how like when your kids start to be 6 and 7 and they can really talk and give you attitude, you start to see them as older. But then when that like little lower, like when their chin quivers, it's like, oh no, you're fucking baby again.
Yeah.
It was like that. And she was like, this is worse than Santa Claus. She's like, and we ended up having this kind of lovely conversation about how sad it was. And like, we were both crying. And she did it. She pulled a you. She was like, are you crying? And I was like, yeah. So she was like, so it's been you the whole time. And she said some really sweet things. So, and I was like, I think that like there is magic, and that like the love between people is magic, and that like our heartbeats sync up when we're close together, and kind of some of the stuff we talk about that's like more sciencey, but seems kind of amazing. And she was like, so I guess you like, she was like, you're the fairy, so you're kind of magic. And I was like, oh kid, you're gonna fucking give me again. Yeah.
Oh God.
And then it's the last thing she said was really funny. I was like, I feel like when you just looked me in the eye and asked me, she said, I wish I didn't know. She said, I wish I could go back to not knowing. And I was like, yeah, I was like, I just felt like when you looked me in the eyes and asked me, I didn't want to lie to you. I didn't feel like it would be right to lie to you. And she said, I'm glad you told me the truth. I would rather you told me the truth than lied to me. But next time I ask you something like that, just lie to me. So anyways, I don't know exactly even what I want to talk about, but it was the saddest I've felt in a long time. And it also like made so acute that discomfort of like wanting to just make the world feel so magical. But then also it's like, did I do that in the wrong way that then set up some kind of disappointment? Like, should I not have just always been saying like, oh, there's more stars in the sky than grains of sand on all the beaches, and there's more particles in your body than stars in the sky, and everything's magic? I just don't know. I don't know if I did it right.
Well, I don't think you need to worry about that, because it's something that we do in American culture, at least, with Santa and, Easter Bunny and everything. And it's, I've thought about it a lot, because I don't like lying to our kids. I don't lie to them about death. Since they've been like 3, it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah. We believe in our family, at least. And I'm like, yeah, I believe that, yeah, you're just gone afterward, and then never again, nothingness forever. Mm-hmm. And like, so tell them that straight dope. But I think that there's fun. It's fun to have that magic and think that the world is full of stuff. Because otherwise, like, maybe it's a way to transition kids from, where they're born and they're just so pure or like innocent or naive, into understanding that there's like genocide and rape and war in the world. That maybe this is a way to kind of get them there, where it's like, okay, well, this is, and then that stuff starts to fall away. And maybe it's a normal progression to help them through to adulthood. Mm-hmm. But I do a similar thing. Like, oddly enough, all of our kids are still believing in Mr. Nicholas.
Are they really?
Yeah. And
I'm so fucking jealous.
I
held on to that shit till I was 12. Right. And I remember being over at a friend's house and him basically being like, bro. And I was like, fuck you. It's real. Right.
Well, I think that kids figure it out when they're ready to figure it out. Yeah. Our oldest has said to me, kids at school say he's not real. He's real, right? I'm like, man, I don't know. I think he is. And he's like, yeah, but then who? Yeah, because he has to be real, because otherwise you would have done the presents. I'm like, yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah,
makes sense to me. Like, if they ever ask point blank, I'm always just kind of ambiguous about it. I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know. Yeah, because I think as you get older, I think they deep down know.
But they don't want to know. Right. I think I did. I mean, long before I was 12. Like, surely some part of me knew. I just didn't want to.
Right. And there's been some very obvious things where my wife and I have said something like, yeah, well, we got you this thing. When are you going to, like, you got me this thing. Santa got me this thing.
Yeah, we of the world.
Your parents plus this magical being that's 250 years old. Yes. Yeah. We, the royal we. Because what's the alternative? You never did the fairy thing, right?
This episode is brought to you by Milkless. We are self-funded, self-sponsored. Matt and Max, we're spending way too much time a week on this for your listening pleasure. So, if you want to help out, please visit our Patreon. Just kidding, we don't fucking do Patreon. We're not asking for any money. All we want is for you to text this to a friend. So, if you could pause the episode right now, think of someone who might benefit from Milkless. Maybe it's a dad you know, a mom you know, someone
Think of the shittiest father you know.
No, that shittiest father doesn't care enough to listen. But someone who maybe likes podcasts and, you know, the thought of a parenting podcast is like, oh my God, it's like so dry. You can tell them how funny I am and how Matt
also says things sometimes.
Yeah. You need a dictionary to understand half of the things he's saying because he likes to show his big vocabulary.
Oh my God. So, read a book, Max.
Anyway, what was I saying? So just pause the episode right now. Text a friend. It means so much to us, and you will ensure that we will continue making these episodes free of charge forever.
One of the things that I found myself saying over and over to her during that conversation when she was kind of coming to terms with the idea that that at least this fairy in the yard and fairies the way she thought about them were not such an immediate part of our life. The thing I kept saying is there's so much we don't know. There's so much we don't know about how things work. And which is the same thing that I actually handle death a little differently than you do. I mean, we talk about it. She knows she's going to die. She talks about it hilarious. She's just like, I do not want to die. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. And she's like, you can't. And I'm like, it'll be so long. But one of the things, but as far as what happens after, I'm like, no one knows. We can't know. Like, some people think this, some people think this, some people, So I do think that there is magic in what we don't know. I mean, I just read this book about trees, and there's trees that are that go dormant and then are reborn out of this rhizome layer. And the rhizome layer is tens of thousands and sometimes maybe even millions of years old. And the trees talk to each other through their root systems and release scents that warn other trees of oncoming infections so that they can, there is shit about this world that should feel like magic. Oh. And too often doesn't. And I wanted to imbue the world with this sense of wonder.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that our instinct to do that is myth, to create myth.
I think it's easier to maybe have them understand it. Also, speaking of Radiolab, From Tree to Shining Tree, that episode is about the fungus layer beneath.
Yeah, that rhizome. Am I saying that right? Yeah.
I don't know about that, but
I think the rhizome is the fungus, but I could be fucking way wrong.
But anyway, so that's a great episode if you want to see that. But I mean, yes, but I think also it fills the world with wonder. There's two other points that I wanted to make is it also, I think our Dutch friends did this when they found out about Sinterklaas, is you become Sinterklaas, the older kids to the younger kids. And it helps the tradition of the magic there or whatever. So, you could tell your daughter that she is now the fairy.
Yeah.
And she can do it for your younger daughter. Now you are the fairy. Just like Matt, you were the fairy. Now she is also a fairy and can leave this to create that magic. And then the third thing is, I think it also teaches people to question things. This is kind of a strange atheistic sort of story, but one of my good friends, John from high school, I remember when we were talking about this in high school, he was like, oh my God, when I found out, I was like, so Tooth Fairy's not, and my mom's like, no. And he's like, Easter, nah. Santa Claus, nah. He's like, God? She's like, no, that one's real. That one's real. And he's like, what?
Why? That's hilarious.
But it even if whether you are a person of faith or not, it says, you know what, hey, this could be another story. And either it solidifies your faith even further because whatever, or it doesn't, but either way, it also teaches you to question things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It did feel, while the whole thing was like very, very sad. And I guess like at a fundamental level, what made it so sad was like, you are not quite as much of a little kid as you used to be. It's what's supposed to happen, but watching your kids little by little become less innocent about certain things is hard. It's like really sad. Especially when you remember pieces of that innocence from your own childhood. But I will say that like the experience of it, of her finding out while very sad, was like really sweet.
She didn't have like a massive tantrum and you're like, you fucking ungrateful piece of shit.
No, she said really nice things.
You ripped the fairy shit off the wall.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're a liar. You lied to me. It wasn't like that, but it did feel important that the way she found out was that I told her. Like, I'm glad that she never like busted me doing it. Because that, I think, might have been a pretty different experience that might have involved more feelings of
trickery.
Yeah, exactly. And we did, I think you make a great point. One of the big things I told her is like, you are now part of making this real for your sister. And then the fairy brought her and her sister something for the first time, like a couple of days ago. And her sister was like playing with her thing. And my oldest was like, she's like, oh yeah, did the fairy bring you that? And then she kind of turned to my wife and she was like, but you know, and then I took her out of the room. I was like, no, we don't, like, there's no wink nod. Like, this is important. Like, now you got to keep this for your sister and you get to be a part of keeping this. So you just, when she's around, it is the truth. And she was like, all right, okay. So it was that classic thing of like, you get more responsibility, you get to be a part of these things, you get to do things for other people, but you lose something too. It's just this trade. And it was like the immediacy of that moment of like, oh, here's a chapter marker. And now you're a little older. Was fucking sad for me, man. It was really sad.
No, it's definitely sad, especially like that moment, the way you painted it, it felt like a little Kaiser Sose moment that like, wait a minute. You?
Yeah.
You piece of shit. How dare you, Daddy? Fucking
the greatest
asshole.
trick that Daddy ever pulled was convincing the world. Yeah.
But I think the good thing about it is like, after you have that, initial feelings of like betrayal, it's like, wait a minute. So then all that fun and excitement, all that magic that I felt was given to me by this sociopath creating this fairy thing in the wood. No, but seriously though, like I remember that feeling like, so then all my love for Santa, who at first just dies in front of me. How sad that this is all a fucking lie. Then it's like, oh my God, that was my parents. Oh my God, all that love I had for that just transfers immediately over to the parents.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, thank you guys, you know?
Yeah. And I did feel that. She was very sad, but then I did see, that was when she said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but when she was like, so I guess you're kind of magic. And I was like, oh my God, could you say that again while I'm recording it and I'll make it my ringtone? But yeah, I did see that happen. Oh, like ultimately, I don't think it was a bad experience. I don't regret the fairy in our yard. I just wish she could have believed it a little longer.
But just like you wish probably a dog could live a little longer, when you did that, it was like buying a dog that you know is going to die someday. Maybe you didn't think through it, but that was going to come. Yeah, that was going to come sometime. Yeah. And if you let it go on too long, then it might not have been a nice cathartic moment. It might have just faded away. It's like, who gives a fuck about the fairy? I'm 10 years old. It's like,
right. Yeah.
And then
the fairy went out on top. Yeah. Undefeated.
I think it sounds lovely. It sounds magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you squeaked a little tear out of old crusty.
That gets you?
Yeah.
Man.
I squeaked one out.
You squeaked one out? Yeah. Thanks for talking to me about it. That night, my wife had like fallen asleep with the 2-year-old, and then she woke up, and that had happened, and she was exhausted. And I was like, yeah. I just like hadn't really talked to anybody about it.
Oh, that's tough.
But
I think it's great. I think it's magical. I'm sure some people listening are going to be like, you know what? We're going to set up a little fairy house. And other people are saying Matt has a mental illness.
This episode of Milkweed is brought to you by Violet Archer in the case of the Purple Martin. Thank you. Bye.